Hello everyone, I'm Andrew, and Star Wars season is just around the corner. Between The Mandalorian, Rise of Skywalker, and Jedi Fallen Order, we're about to witness the firepower of Disney's fully operational multimedia onslaught. Corporations!
It is unavoidable.
It's hard to believe there was once a time when Star Wars was way more scarce, but between Return of the Jedi and The Phantom Menace, fans endured a 16-year drought of new Star Wars cinema. Thankfully, the saga was kept alive through a vibrant, expanded universe, tons of incredible toys, and some of the greatest video games ever made. For a lot of fans, Star Wars games were their entry point into the series, and for some, they're the high watermark. So today, we're taking a look at the evolution of Star Wars video games, how they carried the torch during its darkest days, and why they took such a drastic downturn in quality. So shine up your swoop bikes, hop in the Ebon Hawk, and kiss your closest Kyle Katarn, because this is how video games kept Star Wars alive. George Lucas was a pioneer in more ways than one, revolutionizing special effects, revitalizing science fiction serials, and redefining what was the big budget blockbuster. But his smartest move might have been making sure he got a piece of that merch. He turned down a higher salary in order to keep his licensing rights, a decision seen as foolish in an era where movies were just movies, not IP factories designed to sell toys, sodas, shampoos, really oddly shaped lollipops, and of course, video games.
I'm going in!
Oh, some game, huh?
Some game!
Lucas's foresight earned him hundreds of millions of dollars and ensured that Star Wars would endure forever. So, let's take a look at the early games. A New Hope premiered a hair, just a sliver too early to capitalize on the golden age of arcade games. By 1977, the medium hadn't made much progress beyond Pong, and Space Invaders was still a year away, but there was an unofficial cassette. Yes, a cassette for the Apple II that gave us our first taste of Star Wars at home. It was not, however, approved by Lucasfilm because games based on movies didn't exist yet. Can you imagine a world in which Captain America: The First Avenger didn't come out on Xbox? The first licensed game didn't come out until 1982, an adaptation of Lucas's own Raiders of the Lost Ark. The same year, the Atari 2600 saw the first official Star Wars game with The Empire Strikes Back, allowing players to experience the Battle of Hoth for the first of many, many, many times.
You found something.
Yes, Manu.
That's it.
Early 8-bit systems also had a Return of the Jedi game, as well as the first title not directly adapting a movie, Jedi Arena.
You are entering a battlefield of the future. The Star Wars Jedi Arena.
Remember that scene in New Hope when Luke's on the Millennium Falcon, he's like training with that wiffle ball thing?
See? You can do it.
Would you pay $60 to play an entire game built around it? Today, probably not. But back then, it was our first opportunity to control a lightsaber.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
83 also saw the release of Atari's iconic arcade game, putting players in the cockpit of Luke's X-Wing to destroy the Death Star in an endless loop of vector graphics and impressive voice samples.
Great shot, kid. That was 1 in a million.
Return of the Jedi marked the end of the original trilogy, but Star Wars would live on in arcades and even survive the console market crash, giving us games like the insanely difficult Super Star Wars series.
Do you have what it takes to take on the Empire? Find out with Super Star Wars, available now.
That game is very hard.
That game.
That game. There was still a ton of untapped potential within the franchise, but the problem was none of these games were developed in-house. They were all licensed to third-party developers, which is weird because Lucas had already been making games for years. And not just any games, I'm talking straight up masterpieces. I'm talking about LucasArts.
Buenos dias.
Say what you will about his screenwriting skills or his ability to direct actors, but George Lucas is a very forward-thinking guy. He knows what he's doing.
Digital magic.
He was an early advocate of Hollywood's digital future and used his Star Wars money to form the Lucasfilm computer division in 1979. Part of that group would eventually become Pixar.
I am your father.
No!
while the team focused on games was spun off into LucasArts in 1982. Unfortunately, because he had already sold the Star Wars license, LucasArts had to be creative. With future legends Ron Gilbert and Tim Schafer in tow, they innovated the graphic adventure genre with titles like Maniac Mansion and The Secret of Monkey Island, a game that to this day slaps. Ooh.
I love you, Tim.
Thanks, Tim. They were critical darlings and presently still hold up as among the all-time greats. But they never sold much because frankly, they weren't Star Wars.
Ooh, I feel tragically empty.
Me too. It's as though an integral part of my essence has been ripped from my being.
In 1993, the license finally came home, and for their first in-house production, LucasArts used their experience on World War II flight sims to create the iconic X-Wing series, a complex simulator that put players in the cockpit of their favorite vehicles and vessels. X-Wing and TIE Fighter were just the beginning. Throughout the decade, LucasArts published a diverse slate of spectacular Star Wars games. Today, your average big licensed game is either an FPS, a third-person action game, or some mobile nonsense. But in the good old days, there was pretty much a Star Wars game for literally every genre. Were you a big fan of Doom who'd rather shoot Imperials than Imps? Dark Forces has you covered, a series that evolved into the fan favorite Jedi Knight. Can't get enough Age of Empires, but you prefer Y-Wings to War Elephants? Galactic Battlegrounds is the game for you, baby! From the dynamic dogfights of Rogue Squadron to the rail shooting of Rebel Assault, there was a Star Wars game for every type of player, even ones who just wanted to mess around on their Windows 95 machines at work. They weren't all winners, but it was a time of relative drought for Star Wars. The expanded universe was keeping the franchise alive in our hearts and minds, and directly inspired crossover titles like Shadows of the Empire, my first Star Wars game. But beyond the hardcore fans, there wasn't much to engage the more casual crew, except for the video games. I'm sure a lot of Star Wars fans bought Rogue Squadron, but I bet there were even more kids who had been born long after Return of the Jedi, desperate to put their N64 expansion packs to use on some awesome X-Wing action. And once they pressed start, the compelling world and iconic designs of the Star Wars galaxy had hooked a new generation of fans, just in time for the special edition re-releases and the long-awaited prequel trilogy. With movies dropping every 3 years, LucasArts focused on crafting experiences centered around the new films. The games were still solid, but that was before the dark times, the EA era. It's in the game. Oh, what's in the game?
Microtransaction.
Oh, what's in the loot box? Now, to be fair, Electronic Arts wasn't entirely to blame for Star Wars games losing their way. LucasArts had already actually begun to botch it. They were still releasing once-in-a-lifetime games like 2003's Knights of the Old Republic, but that one was farmed out to BioWare, the RPG developer that would also be ruined by EA.
Rest in peace, Mass Effect.
There's more to life than this.
KOTOR 2 was similarly developed outside of LucasArts by Obsidian of New Vegas and the Outer Worlds fame. Just a small clap for them because, wow, just two meaty, beefy, beautiful games. But strained relationships and shifting deadlines resulted in the game releasing as essentially an unfinished product. Times were tough at LucasArts. In 2003, the entire company grossed $100 million, a fraction of what a single smash hit like Halo could bring in. Star Wars games were saturating the market, but for every Republic Commando or Battlefront, high-profile bombs like The Force Unleashed and mismanaged MMO Star Wars Galaxies put the company in kind of a precarious position. The first layoffs began in 2010, and even though they had new titles in the works like the FET Focus 1313, when Disney bought out Lucasfilm for $4.05 billion, god damn, the game and LucasArts as we knew it were lost in the transition. Hey, down here, they gave my man what was it?
$2.025 billion.
In cold hard cash, not credits, not hippy-dippy sci-fi money. $2.025 billion in cash, baby! A lot of talented LucasArts alums split to form their own studios, like Double Fine and Telltale. And as for Star Wars, Disney handed the exclusive license to EA. Although I'm not entirely sure why. They had just spent $200 million developing the so-so MMO, The Old Republic, but it barely made a dent in World of Warcraft's dominance. You know how much I love World of Warcraft. I guess since EA was the biggest publisher out there, Disney thought, obviously they must be the best, right? The first fruit of this unholy union was Battlefront, an absolutely gorgeous reboot that made up for its lack of substance with a whole lot of sizzle and future potential. It was a huge success too, so much so that EA actually pulled away resources from Uncharted designer Amy Hennig's Project Ragtag to focus on the sequel. Unfortunately, things got ugly with Battlefront 2. EA's insistence on predatory loot boxes and live service elements proton torpedoed the series' reputation, and conflicts with Lucasfilm killed Ragtag before it could even take off. Which brings us to today, and to Jedi Fallen Order. And I've gotta say, it looks pretty good. You put some Star Wars in my Dark Souls and baby, you got a sci-fi stew cooking. I'm there, I'm with you, but even with the New Hope on the horizon, we'll probably never see a streak as incredible as the old LucasArts. In the glory days, there were dozens of different Star Wars games spanning vastly different genres, creating beloved sub-franchises that further enriched George Lucas's legendary world. And that was without multiple Star Wars movies grossing billions of dollars every single year. Video games were as much a part of Star Wars as the films, the books, the comics, and toys, and Star Wars had a healthy place inside the larger gaming ecosystem. But today, they're just another commodity in Disney's portfolio, designed for massive returns on bloated AAA budgets. Can Fallen Order right the ship and bring balance to the Force? It's a great start, kid, but don't get cocky. Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching. We are really excited for the Fallen Order, but right now I'm more interested in your taste in the classics. So tell me your favorite Star Wars game. Let me know in the comments. Please subscribe to NowThis Nerd, and if you see Darth Vader, tell him I said, "You're absolutely not my father."